I can't believe I'm saying this, but I like this movie. Well, what's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I'm here to present my official movie review for the newest installment in the Terminator franchise, titled Terminator Genisys. Now, this movie was directed by Alan Taylor, and it stars the very solid cast of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Emilia Clarke, Jason Clarke, no relation, and Jai Courtney. And this movie is a little bit confusing because it's kind of a reboot, remake, and sequel all at the same time. And I think one of the hardest challenges for this movie is trying to figure out exactly which one of these it's more trying to be. Now, for those of you that don't already know, this plot starts taking place in the future, and you get to see the final battle between the human resistance and Skynet, and which, if you already know your Terminator lore, you know that the humans will inevitably win, which is why they will be sending a Terminator back to, I believe, 1987 in order to kill John Connor's mother, Sarah Connor, to prevent him from being born, therefore allowing Skynet to win the inevitable war. However, this time when Skynet falls and they send Kyle Reese back to 1987 in order to protect Sarah Connor from this Terminator that's already been sent back, he finds out that the past has been changed a little bit because Sarah Connor has been preparing for his arrival, and she already knows about Terminators. In fact, she's been raised by one since she was 9. And they're pretty much from that point on trying to figure out exactly what happened in the timeline and how to prevent Judgment Day from happening and exactly where the timeline went wrong. And it's really from that point on that the movie kind of starts jumping around with time travel, and the plot gets a little bit confusing. And if you've seen the second trailer, you know that there's a major twist, which I don't know why they spoiled that in the trailer. They really should have kept that a secret. But something happens to John Connor, and he ends up eventually becoming the bad guy. And that's really all I want to say without spoiling much. Now, I'm going to say this. I know that this movie has really been trashed on a lot by critics and movie reviewers alike here on YouTube, but I'm going to step aside with a very, very small group of people by saying that I actually did like this movie maybe a little more than I was expecting. Now look, I think that in this time, it's unfair to compare this movie to the first two Terminator films. I think we can all agree we will never see another movie of those caliber in this franchise. So it's completely unfair to compare it to those movies. So just judging it on its own terms, it's a lot better than the last Terminator movie, which left a really bad taste in my mouth with Terminator Salvation. And despite how people may feel about Terminator 3, I kind of put it slightly better than this film, despite the fact that I actually did find quite a lot of things about this film to actually enjoy and actually work with the Terminator storyline. Now, to kind of go over the things I really did like about this movie is that, number one, Arnold Schwarzenegger is amazing as a Terminator. This is a character he owns. I think he brings it every time he's done a Terminator film and the 4 variations that he's done. However, this time around, he seems to play a much more father figure to Sarah Connor, which I actually did like the dynamic between those two. And it definitely did bring a lot more emotional scenes than I was expecting this time around. And although some people would complain that the comedy is a little bit awkward, I think that because of what this Terminator has been doing since he's been raising Sarah Connor and she's been kind of teaching him things in order to fit in, the comedy scenes actually kind of work because they're supposed to be intentionally awkward. Now, going into Emilia Clarke's performance as Sarah Connor, I think that she is okay. I don't think we've had a bad variation of Sarah Connor, in my opinion, despite the fact I believe at least 3 different actresses have played her. She's certainly no Linda Hamilton, but I think she does play a semi-younger version of Sarah Connor who's been kind of like raised to be more of like a tomboy and soldier, which is a little bit odd because this is supposed to be the same age. And I think that though she doesn't really bring too much to the character in a new way, she doesn't hurt the character at all. Now, going into Jai Courtney's performance as Kyle Reese, I know that a lot of people have kind of said a lot of bad things about him as an actor, and I'll say this. He's not bad in the role, but he just doesn't bring anything new. He's certainly no Michael Biehn, who really made Kyle Reese a pretty interesting character and a person you really want to root for, as opposed to this version where he's just kind of there. I think Jai Courtney is the kind of actor where if you cast him in your movies, you're gonna get a solid performance. It's not gonna be bad, but you're not really gonna remember it maybe a week or two from now. And going into what little we get with Jason Clarke's performance as John Connor, I actually think he actually was pretty intimidating being the villain, which, you know, that's definitely something new that this movie does. You know, if they had kept that twist a secret, I think that would have worked much better. And I will say that the action in this movie is solid, despite the fact that some scenes are a bit way blown out of proportion. And some of the CGI effects do look really good, especially with an early scene where it recreates one of the key scenes from the first Terminator film. And I was actually a bit surprised of how they actually brought a young Arnold to life, because it looked really, really convincing. So I have to give kudos to the CGI department. Now, this movie has quite a lot of problems. I think the three biggest problems that I had with the film is that, one, the movie doesn't take enough time to establish all these new changes, and it's moving so fast that you don't really understand exactly what is going on. People are talking about events and doing things that, despite the fact that we're in this timeline that, or time period we should be familiar with, are completely alien to us, and they don't explain it. Another problem that I had with this movie is that it felt like the pacing was a little bit mixed. It seemed like we always had to have a talking section, then an action scene, and the next talking section was just a setup for the next action scene, instead of really using these small sections to develop character development. And although there are a couple of scenes where that works for some characters, for most it just doesn't work at all. And there are a number of actors in this movie that are completely wasted and are just like, why did you even cast them if you weren't going to use them to really to their full measure? I just felt like you kind of wasted a really good thing. And the last biggest problem I have with this movie is something that I had a problem with in Jurassic World, and that is they spend way too much time with sequel bait. Now, if you actually watch the first two movies, in my opinion, there's nothing in those movies that indicates that there was ever going to be a sequel to this film. It kind of stands on its own. It has a beginning and a middle and an end. But this movie spends about a third of the time talking about events and things that are certainly going to take place in future films. And if you know anything about AI computers, which apparently these characters do not, you know that the final solution that they have for the conclusion of this film is not going to work, and that's just going to lead into future Terminator films if this movie does well at the box office. And it just hurts the film because I really want to know this story as well as it can be. But because you spend so much time setting up future storylines, you kind of weaken what little story you have here. Now, again, I didn't hate this movie, but I can perfectly understand if people out there really dislike this one, because there is quite a lot to hate. But for someone like me who just wanted an entertaining movie and something that was better than the last two films, then that's exactly what I got, and I'm happy for that. I don't regret seeing this in theaters, and I would happily purchase this on Blu-ray when this finally releases. Now, if I had to give this movie a rating, just being nice and being slightly above my expectations, I'm going to give Terminator Genisys a B-. If you haven't seen this movie, I caution you to at least not compare it to the first two films. If not, don't even watch those two films. I think you might enjoy this a little bit more. But if you do hate this film, I can perfectly understand why. If you like my movie review, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to check me in my future movie reviews. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.